You're about to engage in a process called listening to the future. This right here is an old school card catalog. And in this card catalog are ideas, one idea at a time on index cards, broken down into about 60 categories. Right now, there's about 450 people who have submitted ideas in these different categories. These are ideas for a visionary future, for the kind of world we would like to live in. And the categories, I'll give you some examples here, are things like agriculture and architecture and art. So the kind of practical things that make up our lives. And there are some more abstract things in here like conflict, borders, death, bodies. I think in one of the other drawers, we have time as a category. So there's all different kinds of entry points for envisioning a future that we might desire in this card catalog. Some of the ideas are completely fantastical. Some of them defy the laws of physics. Others are very, very practical and detailed and specific and things that we can do right now and everything in between. So the archive here is based on the idea that while it might feel overwhelming to imagine individually thinking about and facing the very big challenges that we face as a human civilization, that we each have a small part to play in the unfolding of a great vision for humanity. Everything that we've created so far, both positive and negative, was first imagined in some way, collectively or individually by someone. Imagination is one of the most powerful tools that we have. So we're going to start, and we're going to start really small here today. Here's what you need. First, you need a pile of index cards. Now, if you don't have any index cards around, you can also use Post-it notes or tear a piece of paper into small fragments. But the point is, you're going to want to be able to move quickly through multiple pieces of paper. You'll also need a pen or a pencil, preferably a favorite writing instrument, something that moves quickly across the page. And finally, you're going to need a timer. So here are your instructions. One is pick a category to start with. Here are some ideas for categories. Now, you don't have to start with a specific category, but it really helps a lot of people to just pick a direction to start with. It can be really interesting to go with a category that you've already thought a lot about, and just as interesting to go with a category that you have never thought about and see what happens. So once you've got your category, I want you to set a timer for 10 minutes with your index cards or your paper and your pen in front of you. When the timer begins, I want you to consider this question. If there are truly no human-made limits to what you and we can imagine and create, mend and restore, what is your fullest vision for the future world we are creating together? If there are truly no human-made limits to what you and we can imagine and create, mend and restore, what is your fullest vision for the future world that we are creating together? Remember, this isn't about what's reasonable or what's possible even. We're not going to worry about that part. We're going to let our discouragement and our despair just kind of set to the side for a little while. Imagine there might not be any limits whatsoever, political, cultural, emotional, etc. And just let yourself go there to what you could imagine might be possible in a scenario where there are no limits. After you read this question to yourself or hear this question from me, I want you to just let your first thought arise in the category that you chose. It can be anything at all. It can be boring. It can be a fragment of an idea, but write it down. And when you're done, flip to the next index card and write your next idea. This is brainstorm style. So there's really no wrong answer. And you might have to cycle through several cards before you start to hit on an idea that really draws you forward. It's okay to jump around from idea to idea to idea, or you might find an idea that wants to be fleshed out, and you might come up with different ideas related to a central idea. Again, you don't have to respect the laws of physics or worry about if something's doable or not. Just go with your first thought and let yourself almost free associate into this project. A couple of tips: try to focus on what you want to see, not just what you no longer wish to see. Many people, when they start this project, want to write, there will be no more war. There will be no more poverty. There will be none of this, none of that. That sometimes is useful to do, to kind of have it said, right? But what does that look like? What does that feel like to have a world without any war or any poverty? What things are in place in the society to keep us safe from war and poverty? What are our structures and our institutions and our cultural things, set up like to live in a world like that? Start creating more than you're destroying as you're answering these questions. And my final tip is to know that the more you do this, the less general and the more specific your answers will become. So it might feel very general at the beginning, but if you were to do this several times this week, or even several times this month, maybe 5 times this month, your ideas are going to start getting surprising. You're going to start having thoughts that you haven't thought before. And you're going to start strengthening this imaginative muscle in your mind that allows you to discover new ideas that you hadn't thought of before, which can be a very enlivening and very nourishing and a very hopeful practice. So I would love to hear what you come up with. If you're interested in submitting your index cards to the archive here, I would love to have them, and enjoy this process.